you ever wanted to become immune to bullets? It's hard to imagine an ability more useful in warfare when since the 19th century, firearms have made it all but impossible for armies wielding blades and spears to win confrontations against armies using guns. Curiously, from time to time, groups have popped up which have claimed that their followers are able to shake off bullets unscathed via the use of some magic powers. While it may seem that such a concept might have been very quickly dispelled by, well, testing it in a battle, some have managed to convince their followers otherwise. I have selected 4 comparatively well-documented examples of post-World War II groups with widespread use of anti-bullet charms and their particularities. The first example is the Simba Rebellion. This far-left rebellion started in early 1964 in the eastern Congolese province of Kivu. On the 22nd of July, in their biggest achievement of their struggle so far, the Simba rebels managed to capture the provincial capital of Kindu. The rebel general Nicolas Olenga then went on a quest to find a powerful witch who could help his soldiers overcome the power of Western weapons and overthrow the US-backed government. To achieve these ends, he enlisted the help of a powerful tribal sorcerer, Mama Onema. Mama Onema moved to Kindu, where she became a chief witch of the rebel army. She would initiate each warrior by making 3 small cuts between their eyebrows and rubbing an ash made from burning lion and gorilla bones mixed with black fire ants and weeds into the wounds. Finally, she sprayed all of them with a white substance whose exact composition I could not find in the sources. All of this, she claimed, made them bulletproof. They had to follow specific rules when going into a battle. No shaking hands with no Simbas, no sex, no washing or cutting nails, and no looking left or right when fighting. They were to loudly shout Mai Simba Mulele. Mai literally meaning water water, which was supposed to turn any bullets that hit their chest into water. On the 4th of August, the newly formed Simba army descended on the provincial city of Stanleyville, held by a 1,500 strong garrison. One US ambassador who was present there described their entrance in his diary, writing, "A few minutes later, a single file of 40 or 40 men appeared, led by a tall, imposing figure, walking sedately from the forest. Dressed all in white and apparently unarmed, they waved palm branches. They moved with a grace in an eerie, ethereal silence." The group, however, didn't seem to be very effective, as they lost half their men and retreated in some organized column. Congolese soldiers tried firing back at them, but apparently a lot of them believed that it was the sound of guns which caused death, rather than the bullets, so they mostly just randomly fired at trees. Since walking in silence did not work, the next day Simbas decided on a new tactic. One Belgian consul described their entry in his journal. A single, bare-chested Congolese man with feathers in his hair walked slowly down the center of the road, waving a palm branch as he advanced. At first he seemed to be alone, but shortly 6 or 7 others appeared following one another at a distance. They were similarly attired, carrying no weapons, only waving single palm branches, staring straight ahead and chanting Mai in unison as they walked. Their chant proclaimed their dawa. The barrage of ANC bullets had not touched them. As he watched, Amin observed that a longer column of Simba warriors followed the sorcerers. 50 or more somber young men, also looking neither left nor right, walked by echoing their leaders' Mai. Some carried automatic rifles, but many were armed only with spears, machetes, arrows, and clubs. The procession's attire was mixed. Tattered shorts and military fatigue hung closely on most. All were naked to the waist. The assorted headgear made it seem almost a comical parade. Some sported ANC caps, cowboy hats, discarded UN helmets, and even women hats looted from European residences. The attack was more successful as the same day the rebels managed to overrun the city, forcing remaining soldiers to flee and arresting more than 1,000 white people living there, beginning one of the largest hostage crises in the continent's history. But the success proved to be short-lived. Emboldened by their victory at Stanleyville, Onega decided to turn his attention to the eastern town of Bukavu. He requested Mama Onema to make 10,000 amulets for the soldiers. On the 19th of August, Simba rebels stormed the city, only to be met with the might of American air power, which pounded through the rebel columns, inflicting 400 deaths and sending them flying. Angry, Olenga reportedly fired Mama Onema, who was arrested a few months later and publicly renounced the rebellion, calling on ex-rebels to surrender. After a string of defeats indicted by Western mercenaries, the Simba rebels lost almost all their territories. Together, only a small group of them survived in the microforests in the western part of Kivu. Part 2. Holy Spirit Mobile Forces. The year is 1985. The Republic of Uganda is in the middle of a civil war, and 20-year-old Christian woman Alice Akuma has gone insane, unable to speak or hear. Eventually, she claimed to have been possessed by the spirit of Akoli General Lakwena. Her father tried to take her to 12 different witch doctors, but none of them were able to help. She travels to the Murchison Falls, where she meditated for 40 days, after which she became a spirit medium. On the 8th of August 1986, her spirit gave her a new command. It was useless to be a doctor in the middle of a war and to try to heal people while they were being killed. She had to take arms and march on Kampala to end the violence. She set up a camp in her hometown of Opit, a square church surrounded by walls. It had 3 charcoal campfires around the with a ritual vessel in the center. All new fighters were required to first throw into the fire all their previous charms and pagan artifacts before being baptized in the name of Holy Spirit in a font. Then they had to spit in the mouth of a pig to get rid of their sins. The pig was then to be killed and roasted in a fire. Before going to combat, Holy Spirit mobile fighters, as they call themselves, had to undergo another ritual, making clay figures of humans and burying them under the trees. This allowed them to be able to defeat enemy soldiers by trapping the swords in these figurines. Similar practices were performed with models of enemy weapons, whose construction was supposed to grant them immunity from them. The recruits were to follow a strict code of rules, and all of the groups in this video, they were the only ones whose rules were codified. Holy Spirit fighters were not allowed to speak with anyone before the battle, kill snakes, aim at enemies, try to take cover during the battle, eat pork, or have less or more than 2 testicles. They covered the torso with shea butter, which was supposed to reflect bullets, with small balls ran around them on the way to battle, sprinkling holy water and chanting Christian hymns. In exchange, the stones they were throwing were supposed to turn into grenades, and snakes helping them along the way. All of them bearing a single automatic rifle, only shooting straight and not aiming. They were taking heavy casualties anytime they went into a battle. For example, on the 1st of January 1987, the Holy Spirit mobile fighters attacked the army headquarters at Corner Kilak. They suffered heavy losses, and the spirit who possessed Ali said, "Many Holy Spirit soldiers had fallen because they had not followed my instructions. Before the battle, they had drank water and talked with each other as they advanced, although the spirit had forbidden them." In February, a young soldier, Joseph Kony, came to Lakwena, asking to set up his own spirit movement. She ridiculed him.
You certainly came to ask whether stones from the river could also be used as stone grenades, but not every stone could be turned into a stone grenade, and you should forget the idea and instead join the Holy Spirit force.
Kony did not say a word after Lakwena's monologue, but left the temple. As other members of his movement later report, Lakwena had deeply insulted him, and he swore never to fight under the leadership of a woman. He set up his own movement, the Lord's Resistance Army, but that's a story for another day. Back to Lakwena. Over half of the year, she continued the disastrous tactic of launching assault after assault on fortified positions, each time losing hundreds of fighters in the process. In July, she chose instead a new strategy, marching straight on Kampala. She tries to take Soroti, but in each attack lost hundreds of fighters. Finally, on the 23rd of October 1987, Lakfena's men attacked Magamaga barracks in the Jinja districts. The spirit-possessed rebel fighters approached the barracks at around 6 am while singing and shooting, which gave the National Resistance Army soldiers in the barracks ample time to prepare their defense. The NRA fully allowed the enemy to enter deep inside the barracks. In the battle that lasted about 30 minutes, more than 100 rebels were killed and a number of them taken prisoner. Alice herself fled to Kenya after the battle, where she claimed that the spirit had left her. She would continue to live in a refuge camp for the rest of her life. Part 3. Naparama. In the late 1980s, large parts of central Mozambique were locked in an endless tug of war between the government and Renamo rebels. With hundreds of thousands dead, armed forces unable to dislodge rebels, the population was desperate for some new solution. In this climate, let's introduce Manuel Antonio, a man with a mysterious background who claimed that at the age of 12 he died from measles, was buried and resurrected after 7 years. He moved to the Nampali mountain where he received a vision from Jesus Christ, who told him to liberate Mozambique and how to make him immune to bullets. With this knowledge, in early 1990, he entered the frontline town of Alto Moloch, where he performed a spectacle. His bodyguards buried him with a layer of dirt, during which he whispered some mysterious incantations. Then they lit the fire on the makeshift grave. After around 15 minutes, he freed himself from the grave, jumped, extinguished the fire with his bare hands, and claimed to have been resurrected. With this party trick he repeated everywhere he went, Manuel managed to attract a following of 400 boys, whom he promised a simple thing: go with him to the jungle and he would make them indestructible. The ritual involved cutting the recruit's chest and neck with razor blades and then grabbing in their roots a special vaccine made from ashes of local shrub whose exact identity was kept a secret. Then they were struck with a machete to their necks to test their invulnerability. If they flinched, the ritual had to be repeated. Once vaccinated, the fighters had to follow a specific set of instructions. Naparama fighters were prohibited from assaulting women, arguing and stealing from civilians, shaking hands with married people, having sex or eating before a battle, or else they would lose their magic protections. They were also not allowed to use firearms. In March of 1990, Manuel decided to launch the first attack in the province on the Renamo base in Nakwaka. Naparama fighters went to the battle wearing red armbands and wielding spears, bows, knives and machetes. They were singing Christian hymns while some were blowing horns and rattling tin cans. They could not retreat, attempt to duck from incoming bullets, or show any sign of fear. When the rebels heard the column approaching, sounding like 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, with no showing any fear, they fled in panic without fearing a single shot. Militiamen entered the camp, confiscated the weapons that were left behind, handed them over to the Mozambican army. The same tactic followed elsewhere in the Zambezia province, more than a dozen rebel bases falling to the magic-protected fighters. Thousands of young boys, often younger than 15, joined the movement, which for the first time in a year was able to turn the tide of the war, swelling the ranks of the group to more than 15,000 fighters. More than 100,000 civilians were able to return to their homes in the newly liberated areas. Panicked Renamo rebels decided they needed to do something radical to prevent the collapse. They employed a local shaman and created their own magic-protected group to counter Naparama's power. They boasted that their vaccine was stronger than Manuel's vaccine. They started gaining local successes in the province. The turning point came on the 29th of June 1991. Renamo fighters overran the town of Lalaua. They rounded up all the Naparama fighters, executed them, and displayed the severed heads on shop shelves. A rumor quickly started spreading of more than 1,000 militiamen being slaughtered in the town, though the number was later revised to 49. Naparama fighters, now realizing they were vulnerable to bullets and the magic did not protect them as it used to, began retreating across the front line. On the 5th of December 1991, in a final blow to the group, while defending the headquarters of a coconut plantation in the coastal town of Macius against a Renamo attack, Manuel Antonio was killed. His body, riddled with bullet holes and bayonet wounds, was taken to Quelimane and buried. His supporters threw magical charms on his grave, hoping that he would rise again. But as of making this video, this has not managed to happen. Part 4. Anti-Balaka. Let's go forward 30 years. It's March 2013 and Muslim Seleka fighters have taken power in the majority Christian country of the Central African Republic. Looting, torture and rape were widespread in the lawless country. The ousted president, Francois Bozis, decided to exploit the situation in order to regain power. In June of 2013, in the former president's small home village of Benzambe, a resistance cell was founded. Young boys from all over the country came there where witch doctors were selling gris, amulets meant to protect them from bullets and machetes. The name Anti-Balaka came from Sango words for machete, literally meaning resistant to machetes. One young fighter later described the complicated rules in a court. There are many different types of gris. One type of gris is a medication that you must drink. Another type of gris is a vaccination. In order to receive this vaccination, you must have your skin cut with a razor blade so as to receive the vaccination directly into your bloodstream. There is another type of gris, such as uraga and tadait, that you wear externally around your neck, arms or waist. There is also another type of gris that you smoke. Each different type of gris can protect you from different types of weapons or give you different set of powers. Some gris provided protections from machete guns, others from being shot at by Kalashnikovs, and others from being shot at by makeshift or traditional weapons such as bows and arrows. If someone had not received the appropriate gris for a particular type of weapon, they could be injured or killed. One journalist described the process of making such a charm. They showed me an anti-rocket shrub. They picked leaves which they then crushed in a mortar using a pestle, then they dried the resulting powder. Small sachets were then filled with the mixture and the anti-balaka hung them all over their bodies. Under their clothes, they covered themselves with small bags placed on the skin, on their biceps, their neck, their waist. These shield pouches also contain various substances, objects or pieces of paper taken from sacred texts. The contents of each sachet remain in any case secret. The amulets also had requirements for them to work. You had to refrain from having sexual relationships, eating food made by a woman on her period, washing yourself before a battle, or killing animals to eat them. The exact prohibitions varied from fighter to fighter according to their testimonies. Anti-Balakas did not have access to modern firearms, so most of them were armed either with blade weapons or homemade shotguns. With such protections, the anti-Balaka fighters went on a rampage across the western part of the Central African Republic, with one message: Muslims must go. They attacked Muslims everywhere, regardless of if they were civilians or Seleka fighters. They burned down their neighborhoods, looted their property, and even killed them. On the 5th of December 2013, they launched an attack on Bangui, and on the 10th of January 2014 forced the Muslim president Marshal Dotiotia to resign. By mid-2014, the entire western part of the country was under anti-Balaka control, with thousands of Muslims who lived there killed or displaced in a massive campaign of ethnic cleansing. The situation persisted until the 2020, when curiously they changed their course, united with their former Seleka enemies, and revolted against the government, before being largely destroyed in a Russian counteroffensive. So, what can we learn from these examples? First, we can notice interesting parallels between these groups. A charismatic leader, a strict code of behavior, complicated rituals of enlistment, often paired with body modifications, and with short-period sugar rush rapid growth and initial successes against enemies who flee in panic as the magical vaccines work more psychologically than physically. At this stage, any deaths and injuries are simply explained as a result of not following the magical rules correctly. Eventually, someone calls your bluff, massacres your forces, destroying all your aura, and resulting in the rout of your forces without proper weapons or training.